No black holes pull, no crushing weight, just a cosmic tunnel to a distant gate.
Talking wormholes, stargates, negative energy, travel through the cosmos, it's our destiny. MH370, where did it go? Bowling 777 through a wormhole flow. We're talking wormholes, stargates, negative energy, travel through the cosmos, it's our destiny. MH370, where did it go? Bowling 777 through a wormhole flow.
Exotic matter, negative energy's the key to stabilize the wormhole for you and me. Quantum vacuum squeezed so tight, creating conditions for this wondrous flight. Static fields and lasers in the lab they play, generating forces in a new kind of way. Gravitational squeezing, Casimir's force, negative zones we need to stay the course.
Talking wormholes, stargates, negative energy, travel through the cosmos, it's our destiny. MH370, where did it go? Boeing 777 through a wormhole flow.
Thin shell formalism placed so fine, spherical geometry we realign, energy conditions that we must defy. For a stable wormhole, let's give it a try. Coulomb forces balancing the plates, creating the throat. Open the gates, from Earth to the stars in a single bound. A shortcut through space profound. Engineers and dreamers hold the key to future worlds and what we could be. With science in hand, we forge ahead through the cosmic paths that we now tread.
We're talking wormholes, stargates, negative energy, travel through the cosmos, it's our destiny. MH370, where did it go? Boeing 777 through a wormhole flow.
From the fields to the stars, we break the chains. Understanding the universe, we make the gains. Lil Hula Crunk shines, bringing truth to light. Through his music, we'll explore the night. With wormholes and stargates, our path is clear. Exploring the cosmos, our future's here.
Hey, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Ann Vandersteel, and welcome to this incredible edition of Steel News. I don't usually break in on a Thursday at 2 o'clock. I try to keep my schedule when I do show up about 1 o'clock, but this is unprecedented times, and we have got to really do some serious work, and I appreciate the audience that's coming in that are big fans of Ashton Forbes. This is someone who I learned about, I don't know, maybe about a year ago when I was flying back from Panama. And I said, oh my God, I got to reach out to this guy. And he's really responsive. When I DM'd him on X, he was following me. So we connected. And well, it took me a little bit of a hot minute with a lot of stuff I've got going on to get around to connecting with him. But I did get to meet somebody he had an interview with, Dr. Stephen Greer, at an event at Mar-a-Lago. And Dr. Greer was sitting at the table with none other than 3-star Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. So if you ever need some sort of, shall we say, evidence maybe, or just, that by association, he's sitting at General Flynn's table, the guy's the real deal. He's the real deal. All right. So this is really an exciting time for me. You all don't know me very well from my childhood and how I grew up, but I had a kind of a unique childhood. My dad was a captain in the Army Air Corps, U.S. Army Air Corps, World War II. He had me when he was old. He was 50, but because most people wouldn't be able to say that at my age. But the short story is my dad, had seen some unique technologies and did some things that were in terms of what he did as a test pilot in World War II that was classified. So I was brought up talking about a lot of things we're going to talk about today. And so this isn't foreign to me, but there's a time and a place for my audience to introduce this kind of stuff. And I like to look at things through a global lens, a geopolitical lens. So this is a very special edition of Steel News for me, because we're going to pierce this veil of secrecy and we're going to look into the technologies that frankly can change the world. And frankly, if they haven't already. Ashton Forbes is an independent researcher. He's a self-styled whistleblower on quantum teleportation, zero-point energy, suppressed energy technologies, best known for leading the MH370X investigation. Remember that Malaysian Airlines that disappeared? And calling out the secrecy that keeps revolutionary tech hidden from the world. And in recent months, Ashton Forbes has shared compelling, if not controversial, research on X about quantum energy, teleportation, zero-point energy, and even theories linking the disappearance of Malaysia Flight 370 to covert teleportation experiments. From cold fusion and artificial gravity to AI-driven psyops and the quantum ether, Forbes suggests we're in the midst of suppressed technological revolution, one that could liberate humanity from energy scarcity, debt slavery, and geopolitical manipulation. Wouldn't it just be freaking fantastic if we didn't have to pay for energy? Think of the hidden tax that is in everything in your life. And as tensions, of course, between Israel and Iran escalate, and as the cost of living skyrockets throughout the hidden energy taxes and inflation, society, we're all standing at a big crossroads. And to address this and the looming U.S. engagement in war between Israel and Iran, joining us for the second half is George McMillan. He's a geopolitical strategist whose work reframes really global power struggles as a long-standing contest between land power and sea power. We're going to see how that plays out here, I think, in the not too distant future, by the way. But with disruptive technologies like zero-point energy, teleportation, artificial intelligence, the entire equation may be about to collapse. So I want to bring these two guys together in the final segment where I'm going to have Ashton and George get together. We're going to have this bigger conversation. Are we standing at the edge of a Star Trek future or a technocratic prison disguised as progress? I'm sure you guys see all the information that's floating around on X about Palantir and, where is this all really going? Of course, the Real ID and Barbie over there at Department of Homeland Securities. I call her Barbie. But anyhow, could the release of zero-point energy and related breakthrough technologies truly dismantle this fossil fuel empire? I don't think it's really fossil fuel, by the way. I'm just saying. Collapse the control matrix upheld by media, government, academia, and usher in a decentralized Star Trek-style future? Or will those who profit from war debt and ignorance bury the truth before humanity wakes up? So today, joining me now to meander through the topics about zero-point energy and quantum ether, quantum energy teleportation. We're going to talk a little about Flight 370, cold fusion, plasma reactors, magnetic motors, basically zero-point energy, AI, the psyops, and all that stuff. And of course, we have to talk about the egg video because that has been really controversial for Ashton. Joining me now is Ashton Forbes. Ashton, it is great to have you. Let me bring you up here on the stage. Thanks so much for being with us today. This is sort of like a really exciting interview for me because I don't get to do these very often.
No, thank you for having me. And I'm excited to talk about it. I love talking about zero-point energy and demystifying it and help people understand what it means, what it can do, what it can't do, and why it's been kept hidden from us for so long.
Yeah, why has it been kept in? So before we go there, I want you to tell my listeners a little bit about who you are and actually what brought you into the public eye as a researcher on these suppressed technologies. You've done a lot of work around Flight 370, but
Yeah.
was that your entry point? How did you get here?
Yeah, that honestly is it. I didn't even want to be a social media influencer. I didn't want to have to learn quantum mechanics, but I dug into MH370, the missing Malaysian airliner, a couple years ago is when I began researching it, when these videos reemerged. And a lot of people just dismiss the videos right offhand. Some people, many people in the chat right now, were longtime believers like myself. For me, it was when I realized we were looking at a computer software in one of the videos that was somebody was moving the software around. I thought that was a very peculiar detail. Even at a mouse cursor coming over the screen, you could tell someone was interacting with the software. And now we know that that is Gorgon Stare Air Force surveillance capability. So the story
What
that
does
is
that mean? What does Gorgon Stare Air Force surveillance capability mean?
that means they've got this plane flying low. Usually this is for tracking things on the ground. So this plane is flying low and they've got a drone flying above it. And this drone flying above it has cameras on either wing. Now there's different configurations for these as the system has advanced, but they can loiter these drones up in the sky and it produces Google Earth video playback. So you're watching the massive area view update a few times per second. That's why it's called wide area motion imagery, WAMI, because technically it's not video. Video requires like 24 frames per second. That's why it looks so seamless. So that's why in the WAMI, you're watching this person move this camera around. That's like a zoomed in focus view that they can pop these windows up, and it looks like it's jerky. That's why the plane looks jerky when it's moving, because it's a low frame rate, only 6 frames per second.
Right.
So that was like the proof that, wow, there's no way anybody made this. Like, this is actually military software that even now, basically nobody in the public knows about. And at the time, you would have had to been on the cutting edge of the black world technology to even have any idea of what this was when the videos came out. So I've been researching the science about what we see in those videos, because we watched the Malaysian airliner just vanish. Like, it just poof goes through a mirror. Like, this is, a wall, but it's just not there anymore.
Right.
And it turns out this is all connected to this idea of a gravity wave, making gravity waves, manipulating with the ether, that space-time is not an empty vacuum, that just like Einstein said, that we might be able to produce a Einstein-Rosen bridge, a wormhole between 2 points in space and time.
Yeah.
And I'm here to talk to you today because it's all real. It's all legit. Stephen Greer specifically has looked at these videos. You can see the silhouette from the video overlaid over a picture of the plane there. And he said that his people say that the science is legit and that that's an Einstein-Rosen bridge.
Wow.
And the discoveries that I've come across, this is just my personal journey in the research, is that we're not looking at like aliens coming out of nowhere with these orbs. Like, this technology is technology that humans have developed. Human beings, people specifically in the Air Force research labs, and they've been working on it for, probably a very, very long time. And the last thing I'll say before I let you jump in is that I don't know if it comes from aliens, or if we dug it up from an ancient civilization, or if we just figured it out ourselves and we've been using these other things as a distraction. End of the day, I just want to fix the here and now, because we can't go back and fix what happened before. At least I don't think. More on that later, though.
Yeah, no, I don't. I would agree with your assessment. You kind of have to pick up right now. There's so much coming at us. I mean, I don't even know where to start. But I mean, the big thing obviously is what's happening over in Israel, Iran, and the fact that it's becoming more and more obvious we're going to be jumping in this. I was speaking to somebody earlier. We'll leave them off the table, but many believe, I should say, that Friday is the day that we might actually go hot, right? Well, we're going to enter the war. We'll see. But there's a lot of pieces, Powell not lowering interest rates today is going to be problematic for the president, having to refinance our debt. So he's going to have to print money. There's really no other way out of it at this point in the short term. And best way to print money is to go to war, right? That's pretty easy. And then, of course, if you look at what's going on with our oil reserves, they're moving lots of barrels of oil around because they need to urgently refine them. Well, you use them for cars and airplanes, maybe, and since you go to war, you spend a lot more aviation fuel. So there's just some tells like that are happening. But we'll see. Maybe we're just getting the chess pieces in line. So looking at, back into this discussion and refocusing here, I want to kind of touch on some topics just quickly. Malaysia Airline. Do you have any idea where to go? I mean, did it end up at Diego Garcia? Where's the plane?
Yeah. That's a great question. And the funny part is we might have enough evidence to like really make informed guesses on where it actually is.
Okay.
Because we can look at where was this debris found? Because okay, now we've got this story, we've got these videos, and we're going, okay, they've got some exotic technology, but what's happening? Well, it's definitely teleportation. It's not annihilation that they're doing to that plane. It's not cloaking, although cloaking and teleportation kind of end up being very, very similar when you get down to the physics of it. But this plane is actually going from one location on Earth to another location. And I'll be accurate to the videos. It's being pulled backwards as well. If you just use electrical engineering theory, first principles, you can figure out that this plane is being pulled backwards based on the spin of these basically electromagnets spinning around the plane, because that's fundamentally what those orbs are, just little balls of energy, little magnets essentially. And so they're pulling that backwards. So when you look at where the debris was found, well, this one piece of debris here that I've just now kind of rediscovered, I knew about, but it seems like it might have been like an operation to like hide that this debris was from MH370. It looks just at a glance like a piece of a commercial airliner. It even has the Boeing honeycomb pattern in the debris. And you have to wonder, how could a piece of debris wash ashore in Thailand and then a bunch of other debris wash ashore in Africa? Those are really, really far apart from one another.
They really are.
So, well, the answer is, oh, wow, we are looking at a video of this plane that was flying west over past Thailand from the South China Sea, and then it's being teleported to the west based on electrical engineering principles. So that puts it somewhere near the Maldives or closer to Africa. And that's why if this plane did go down, it didn't go down in the South Indian Ocean. It had to have gone down somewhere much closer to Africa. And I'd say, if I looked at the ocean currents, I'm not a ocean currentologist or whatever they call themselves, but it looks like a perfect match for where they found the debris, like Diego Garcia military base. Looks like a great spot. Turns out to be a super secret military base. No one's allowed to fly near it at all. Oh, all the other conspiracy theories at the time said that like that's where the plane went. You can even go on Google Earth, and like the Malaysian people trolled them. And if you look up Diego Garcia, there's like a picture of MH370 like tied to the base as well. So, and there were some islanders that saw the plane flying low, like 21 people, I think is the official number. 2 different people or 3 different people went and interviewed these people on this small island. They don't see jumbo jets fly over their tiny island. Huge plane flying south towards Diego Garcia. It got dismissed because the plane was coming from the wrong direction. Instead of coming from the east, where they thought the plane should have been coming from, it was coming from the west. So, yeah, for me, I think either that plane ended up at Diego Garcia, they ripped it up and some pieces got in the water, or it was on fire from this operation they were doing to it and some pieces were falling off, or they ditched the plane somewhere underwater near Diego Garcia where like nobody's going to ever go look. Something like that.
So the plane was reportedly on fire. That's what,
I think the whole thing was an operation. Like the CIA had the whole thing planned. And I mean, now this is why I like to look at it from the geopolitical perspective. So, as this weird letter to me stated, all the problems in the world happen for political reasons.
Right.
So these are just the big dogs. The big state governments are coming in and they're trampling over all the little people. So this, in my opinion, the story that makes the most sense is that these 20 engineers on board this plane from Freescale Semiconductors that's connected to U.S. defense, they were either they had information that China was going to leverage them or they were defecting or something. 8 of them were Chinese nationals and 12 of them were Malaysian nationals. So you're like, okay, none of them are American, but they work for this American company. They're going to Beijing. The story about why they're going there doesn't really make sense, like to upgrade the plants. There shouldn't be all these people, all these engineers on the same plane at all. And so you imagine a situation where the CIA let that happen just to run the operation. And the first thing you need to do is you set the fire to turn the plane around. Plane's flying to China, okay? Well, what do I want it to do? I want it to turn around. So when does the fire start? Like right after it gets up towards cruising altitude. 40 minutes after it takes off, planes, boom, fire. Got to turn around. Got to go away from China. Got to go away. And here's the thing. It's a backup plan too. Because if their other weird orb strategy doesn't work out, they want this plane to crash. They want that plane to crash because then that way, you know, they don't get caught or what have you. But just as this plane's about to crash, after an hour of the plane flying around trying to find somewhere, then they've got drones already ready to go, already watching this area, intercepting the plane, and they release their weapon, their orb weapon on it. So the last thing people ask me is like, what happened to the people? Well, we've got a fire on the plane. We've got some crazy teleportation technology, which nobody's ever seen before. I'd say it's extremely unlikely that they survive that, especially when I think about things like the Philadelphia experiment, where people were getting stuck into walls and things like that. It feels like they didn't have the safety protocols exactly set for that that operation that was happening there for that plane, especially if we were finding pieces of the debris of the plane kind of all over. So I don't want to give anybody false hope out there. I'm just here to give you the hard facts.
No, it's good, and I appreciate it because you provided information that I hadn't heard. So it's always good to learn information from wherever you can get it. And I think you make a compelling argument. A lot of things don't add up, but the proximity to Diego Garcia, which is a super secret base, is of course always of interest, and it piques everybody's interest. Just like all the other super secret bases that if you Area 51, or which I've drove into and then been chased out of. So this is just the world in which we live, and we're here to serve the masters. But I'm one of those people.
Drama recently? Sorry to interrupt, but did you see the drama about Diego Garcia recently? Because it was been in the news. I think it was Senator. Crap, I forget his last name.
Is it on the House or the Senate Intelligence Committee?
Yeah, so the Diego Garcia, first of all, they gave Diego Garcia back to Mauritius, and Trump actually just signed off on that. And
they gave it back to Mauritius.
Senator Kennedy, I think it was. And
I'm sorry, did you say they gave it back to Mauritius?
Yeah, so to Mauritius. So basically, we stole this land, or the British did. The British basically took this land back in like the 50s, and we built a super secret base there, and they leased it out. And then now we've decided like, oh, we did this horrible thing. So there's like the only people to give it back to, those Mauritius, which is like the closest nation, but we're still gonna like keep this secret base there. And
so
now,
so this is significant, and it's on sovereignty, and it goes into the whole global reset situation, because there's people out there like myself. I'm a national. I'm not even a U.S. citizen anymore, that believe that your sovereignty was stolen because they've basically make everybody citizens, and they we all know what they did to the American Indians, what they've colonized all over the world, and that's interesting that they gave it back. So.
Yeah.
Keep going.
And it makes you wonder, maybe it's not that important anymore. I mean, that's one thing that goes through my mind right away.
Or that.
Senator Kennedy brought up good points. He's like, this weakens our position with China, because China can leverage Mauritius now. And and it's like, yeah, it makes sense. And why do we have that base to begin with? Because it's strategic. I mean, it's in the middle of the Indian Ocean right there. It lets us cover that whole side of China, everything near India, etc., the whole Southeast Asia as well. So it is interesting that we gave that up, and it kind of makes you wonder, is there anything also geographically interesting about that place? There's this magnetic anomaly that's somewhat near right over that as well. So it kind of makes you wonder from the the paranormal perspective, like, is there something unusual there? They've been digging
ley lines. Is there ley lines that cross it?
I'm not really like a big ley lines guy, but maybe something like that in general. But they also recently in the news were putting a bunch of bombers. We were sending a bunch of bombers there to get ready for potentially the war here that they may have known about was going to already kind of go down. Yeah. One last question I want for you real quick, because I want to ask a war related question on the Iran stuff. Do you think that the next war we do, let's say, I think this Iran thing's, the ball's already, rolling downhill. I don't see it stopping. Do you think we're going to actually have boots on the ground in the next war? Or do you think we've technologically surpassed beyond that with all this drone technology, that it would be more of just like cyber related?
Yeah, I think it's going to be air and cyber. I don't think we're necessarily going to put boots on the ground. I mean, that's so yesterday. And I don't think Americans, I mean, that's just not going to be palatable for Americans. I mean, how many flag draped coffins have we watched come home, and how many trillions of dollars have gone out? And yet we're still swallowing the same narrative, WMD narrative, over and over and over again. I mean, it's ridiculous. Like, how dumb do they think we are? The tail is wagging the dog of America right now. And it does, it's not a binary choice for me. It's not, I'm not anti-war with Iran because I'm pro-Israel or vice versa. I don't want war, period. And it doesn't mean I support Iran or don't support Iran. I just don't want war. So, and I understand that, if people really believe there's nuclear weapons of mass destruction in Iran, and yes, they chant death to America, but let's dissect that psyop. Is it the people of Iran really doing it, or is it the supreme leader and artificial intelligence pumping that narrative out? Because I've known families that fled Iran in '79, and they love America, and what happened with the CIA installing their own puppet government in the '50s destroyed their country. And so they want their country back. They're a very modern country. I mean, I know you know this. So what's the real story with Iran, and what's the real story with Israel? And I think, and every country, Ashton, we have rogue governments, including our own, that are suppressing the people. And that's what's happening around the world. We have just a RICO, criminal infested institute of governments that are just killing us and weaponizing us and monetizing us and making us all debt slaves. We got to get out from underneath that. And we got to think differently. And that's why technology, I think free energy, is such a potent conversation, because those governments don't want it. If they did, they would have given it to us already. I mean, we know about Tesla, and we know about 0 point energy, and 0 point is not even like a novel thing anymore. I mean, it's really working. I know people have working 0 point energy on their motorhomes and whatever. So this is not like woo anymore. It's out there, but we got to get it really out there and shake things up a bit.
Yeah. And here's the other thing I would say too, is I want to inform people and not just sugarcoat it. Because here's the thing, I think about it in terms of the bigger picture of why have they been hiding this? What are all the implications? Right. One of those major implications, it's not just simple as they're evil and greedy. They are, of course, but it's also that it's dangerous. I mean, we're not talking about just simple nuclear weapons anymore. I think they use nukes as a dog whistle. I mean, nukes are 80-year-old technology. If you've got 0 point Tesla technology that can create a black hole, I mean, you can wipe out the whole planet. I mean, I think the real danger, if I'm the United States and I've got this super advanced technology, 0 point energy technology, free energy, all our energy sources are basically obsolete, then my concern when I look at Israel, Palestine, or really any two warring factions, I go, these people can't be allowed to have this, because one of them is going to just press the button and wipe out all of us. Like, I don't care if they wipe each other out. I mean, I do, but at the same time, I can't really control everything in the world. But I can't, allow them to have unlimited capability and technology. And that's what I get afraid of, to kind of steelman the other side of the argument is, I mean, they've shown they're not afraid. They're firing hypersonic missiles down in the middle of the city. I mean, we're watching it happen. Maybe they're not quite hypersonic, but those were really fast. 3 seconds from being in the air to creating a shockwave that I can visibly see with my eyes on a video. What would happen if they had this unlimited destructive capability? I think we're all going to be wiped out very, very fast if that's the case. So for me, it's a hard thing to look at and say, really, what is right and wrong here? And if you have that mentality too, the scary part is this, then I'll pass it back over to you, is that if you have the mentality that you can't allow any warring faction other than yourself to have this almost God level technology, because you're afraid because the world will get destroyed before we can all escape it, then you can justify anything, basically. You can justify any fascist, dystopian type act for any reason, including teleporting an airplane that has 239 innocent people on it. And then I guess the question is, how do we accept that reality while also trying to give power back to the people so that we don't have to live in a world like that?
Well, I mean, this is supposedly why League of Nations and United Nations were born, right? That was the idea, so that you would have a benevolent organization to hash things like this out. And back then, maybe we didn't know how sophisticated technology would be today, or maybe we did. I don't know. The point I'm saying is, we are dealing with human beings, and human beings are very fallible, right? There's only one infallible is God. And as far as I know, Jesus isn't walking the earth right now. If he is, he hasn't stopped by to say hello yet. So we're still down here trying to figure it out. And I think this is part of the human journey, and this is what we're on. And I think disclosure is going to be really critical, because look, we've been given choices along the way, and most recently COVID, right? And I don't condemn anybody that took the shot. I didn't, and I, did my research, and I have good, lots of good friends that showed me how dangerous that was. So I didn't take it. I had 4 family members who did, and they're all in really bad shape, by the way, really bad. It's heartbreaking. I've got to go and visit one next week and help her. So I know how evil the world is when it comes to the globalists and the power players, because they have an agenda, and it is clearly a depopulation agenda and controlling all of us. They've said it over and over in various ways. So I think, this is part of the human experiment, the human journey. And, God gives us discernment. I want to play something really quickly because President Trump mentioned this, and it goes right in line with what you're talking about.
We have the greatest military, the strongest military, stronger than any. Nobody's even close. We have the best weapons in the world, but we don't want to use them. If you threaten America or our partners, however, then you'll be faced with overwhelming strength and devastating force. We have things that you don't even know about, you don't hear about, and if you did, you say, wow.
What do you think he's talking about?
I love that quote. And the reason why I love it, and first of all, I want to go ahead and on the record and say I didn't get the shot either. All my family members did. I had as much peer pressure as you could possibly imagine, including my company threatening to fire me over it. And I still didn't take it, just like you, because stuck to my principles, said, you know what? Line in the sand. Here we go. But man, that clip by Trump is amazing because just, I think a couple weeks before that, he said basically the exact same thing, almost verbatim. He said, we have weapons nobody understands. Nobody knows how they work. So we're way far ahead of everybody else. And so then he said that he kind of shrugged and said, so they're not going to do that, in reference to like China and the tariff war that was going on at the time.
Right.
And I was telling people at the time, like, guys, we have free energy and teleportation technology. We should be imposing our will economically upon the world. I mean, it's just a smart strategic decision. I'm not saying that from a moral perspective. I just mean, if you want to be America first, there you go. Boom, he did. And then he goes to the Middle East, and that was in Saudi Arabia where that was happening.
Mm-hmm.
He goes in front of all the Saudi, princes and kings, what have you, right? And he's just telling them, yeah, well, basically anyone on our side, you're good. You're good if you're on our side. But if you're not, well, we got weapons that you won't even be able to comprehend with your mind. So, good luck. And he says it in, pretty openly. And this is the last thing I want to say in this is that Trump, people were from the UFO community, which I'm kind of tapped into, is they were saying if Trump knew about the UFO stuff, he wouldn't be able to resist blurting it out, And I'm going, well, here he is. This is the real secret. Here is the crazy weaponry that we would consider UFO tech, which is just crazy Tesla 0-point energy technology that we just don't understand. It hasn't been demystified yet. Oh, and then one last thing is that Michael Kratsios, the science and technology advisor to the president, also had that speech like in the same, right after Trump said that the first time. And basically says that we held I forget the exact wording, but like we held ourselves back technologically, and that we have the ability to manipulate time and space to annihilate distance. And I'm just sitting there going, guys, there it is.
There it is. And flying cars. And they talked about flying cars. Was it an executive order?
I don't know exactly about that. But yeah, I mean, the point is, I think we're looking at the beginnings of a soft disclosure, of an actual shift where enough people are waking up to really what they're hiding. Energy sources that they call breakthrough energy sources. They use all these dog whistles for everything. And here's the thing about science. Science looks for predictive events. Like your theory is good if you can predict what's going to happen, right? Because then it shows your model fits what was going to occur. And so that's what I like. The reason why I like to look at the geopolitical stuff isn't because I'm a geopolitics expert. I like to look at it because I'm looking at the craziest videos ever, and I know they're real, and they show science that means there's some crazy suppression happening. And you apply it to these geopolitical events, and it starts to make sense. Like, why is Russia and China, why are they so quiet about us just like basically slapping Iran down? Like we're like, hey, we control your aerospace and we can take out your leader any moment we want. And Russia and China are like, okay. Like, well, why are they so afraid? Well, I mean, to me, it's because we have weaponry that they're not going to come. They don't want to get involved. They don't want this smoke. basically. as the
So
kid.
I look at it from that perspective. I appreciate what you're saying there, but I also see it from the geopolitical side. I'm looking at the financial system, right? Which is
Mm.
our financial system is done. It's cooked. The dollar is dead. Gold is doing very nicely. Cryptos are doing well. Decentralization is all the rage, right?
Mhm.
And under Biden, he kicked Putin to the curb and said, "Bye, you're off the SWIFT network. No more banking for you." And Putin was like, Heisman dude, don't really care because I've got gold, I've got oil, and I've got BRICS, my trading partners. And oh, by the way, Joe, we are now settling our trade imbalances in gold. So it doesn't really matter that we don't have the dollar to do this. We've already started trading with each other and using our own basket of currencies and our own natural resources to weight the value of our currency. So we don't really need the dollar anymore. And what is going on, right? The treasuries are being dumped. China's puking them. Japan's puking them now. Everybody's trying to get out from underneath the dollar because they understand. And Trump's is like, well, shoot, I need the dollar to pay off the debts here. Do you think maybe that some of this posturing is also there could be the back channel? Like it's like Brokeback Mountain, right? We all know that the Fed is a bunch of gay freaks that have been enslaving us, like that runs the world. So maybe it's really kind of an unspoken agreement between the bear and the dragon and the eagle. We got to break that central banking cabal, which has enslaved Western Europe, America, Canada, Australia, the Western nations. And the way to do it is to literally just destroy the dollar. And then you can bring it back with asset-backed, basket of currencies. You can have gold and all our natural resources. We got trillions, hundreds of trillions in the ground here. We don't need the Fed. We got our treasury, stand it back up. I mean, that's another way to look at it too, right?
Oh, absolutely. And actually, I mean, I was a business major. That's one thing I actually do know a little bit about. There, and they've been ripping us off. But you don't even need if you look at it from the perspective of like this technology, you would say, and even without the technology, we shouldn't be broke. I mean, we're the most powerful country in the world. Why are we broke as hell? Why are we 30-something trillion dollars in debt? It's because we should be the richest country. Oh, it's because all the politicians have basically just been stealing from us. Like hands in the pot, taking as much as they can possibly take, right? It's like they're the little kids, and this is Halloween, and somebody left the candy thing outside on the front, unsupervised, right? First kid just dumps it all in, right? And now they're all doing it. And in fact, I was listening to Kurt Metzger. I think he brought up a really good point about Trump, who I openly endorsed with a Twitter post because I feel like if he didn't win, I wouldn't be alive right now. But I'm going to criticize him here, and I'm going to say it feels like he's lobbying for the best position in whatever comes next here. Because while he can make significant decisions as the president isn't really fully in control of what's all happening from the broader plan that's set to play out, essentially. Right. And so I think even somebody like Trump realizes, like, hey, he can't just come out and say, here's 0 point energy, free energy is real. We've got teleportation weapons. He can only do as much as he can do to help wake us up.
So 0 point energy, let's break that down a little bit. And while you're doing that, I'm going to go pull up some videos or whatever. But 0 point energy, how does it differ from the energy systems that are currently enslaving us through electricity and scarcity and of course, debt?
Yeah. So 0 point energy is the energy of space-time itself. 0 point energy, if you look the definition up, is whatever energy is left after you get to the lowest ground state. What does that mean? Essentially means if you take all the light, all the heat out of this box, well, what's left after that? What's left is the 0 point energy. What's left is the structure of space-time. The reason why there's distance from here to here, as opposed to there being nothing from there to there, is the 0 point energy. That's what's giving the structure of space-time, whether or not I'm on planet Earth, or I'm up out there in outer space, or wherever I am. And what this means is that there's some actual energy in there. What we think of as empty space isn't actually really empty at all. Quantum mechanics proves this to be true. The simplest analogy is just a swing. From a quantum mechanical perspective, a pendulum or a swing never stops. From a quantum mechanics perspective, it never stops. That's free energy from our macroscopic perspective. So now the only issue is how do we scale up that quantum mechanical effect to the larger scales? Or how do we understand the underlying baseline of that and then interact with it? So 0 point energy, what people have been working on for many years, I like to say there's like 3 different ways to extract 0 point energy that I at least know of that are I will all call free energy. Because this energy we're extracting is the sea of energy that we sit on top of It's the baseline of this energy. And how deep is this energy? How deep is that ocean? This is the big debate. If you really go into the quantum mechanics of it, it's essentially infinite. 10 to the 120. 120 zeros.
Wow.
Huge amount of energy. That's Richard Feynman and John Archibald Wheeler were the ones who calculated that, by the way. Those guys were from the Manhattan Project. So we have this huge amount of energy. The three ways we can potentially interact with it. One is magnetic motors. Why?
Right.
Because this energy is electromagnetic in nature. So if it's electromagnetic, you should be able to interact
Like
with it
maglev.
electromagnetically.
Like maglev in a way, right?
Yeah. In fact, maglev is something people should get into their vocabulary, because I think that what they do to the plane is a form of maglev. We can actually see the Helmholtz coil, which is a toroidal circular coil. That's what the orbs are doing around the plane. It looks just like a Helmholtz coil used for maglev transport. So, and that maybe that's the reason why we don't have maglev. Maybe they figured out that they can like just straight up teleport stuff with it. And they're like, you know what? We're going to stop building those maglev trains. So magnetic motors, if they are set like in the right resonance, right frequency in terms of their spin, etc., you can align also with the correct circuit behind the scenes. Like look into like Tesla's circuits for the people who are really want to know. You can set it up so it produces excess energy, produces more energy out than what's coming
before
in.
I go into the details of the design
The
and my
secret
thoughts
here,
on the original motor.
If you just pause
If
it
you
for one
haven't
second,
subscribed to my
what I
backup
would say
channel,
is that the secret is, and that's actually an interesting one because that one's kind of got like this structure to it, this geometric structure to it, is that you don't necessarily need no net input. You don't need, you can like, it's a lot, you're allowed to like use some energy to start it up. It just needs to be able to run perpetually after that. A lot of people just think like it's nothing, something being produced from nothing. No, you're building a system that's interacting with the 0 point energy to do that. So there's a lot of devices out there. Obviously,
this is a partial rhythm,
but some actually will if they are the right type of design. And if people want some of the designs that I think are legit, the Liberty engine, I think, is probably real. Definitely the Haddam series of designs, which are like magnets, permanent magnets that are set in a specific orientation, can produce it under the right resonance. But magnetic motors, like what we're looking at here, this is stuff that like was exciting in like the 50s and the 70s. For stuff like, it's 2025 now. What's the cool stuff now? Oh, plasma. In fact, plasma and the idea of connecting plasma to the 0 point energy, that goes all the way back to 1989 with cold fusion. And not because it was just like putting metal rods in water and then they got like all this excess heat and they're wondering why are we getting all this excess heat? We just run current through water and we just put some metal rods in it. It's nothing magical. Because they figured out that they could tap in this energy. Where's this excess energy coming from? Oh, it must be coming from this 0 point energy field. So this other guy named Ken Shoulders, he was making these cold non-equilibrium plasma toroids, which is basically just creating a spark gap. You create a spark gap. And he was finding he could make these plasma toroids and they would just persist. They would persist. The same way I was sharing a video on my Twitter account like yesterday of the pool. Actually, if you want to pull that up, that might be great to show people.
Okay.
Just like if you find the pool video from Physics Girl yesterday on my Twitter account, it must be one of the recent ones. It actually shows how these vortex shapes will remain coherent for a really long time, when normally you would expect it to just collapse upon itself. And that's the idea of what Ken Shoulders figured out with plasmas. This same idea. I mean, look at this. So you can see all she does, she brushes the plate through it here, and it creates these vortexes that say this is sped up 10 times speed. So this is like over 3 minutes of that staying stable like that. Like, why does it stay stable like that? Well, technically, both sides are actually connected. They're connected through a wormhole that's only visible under the water on a separate dimension. If you're looking at it from the flat surface, it just looks like two black holes on the surface. But what we don't realize is they're actually connected by a vortex that's keeping them both stable for a really, really long time. And so what she's going to show here in a second is that she drops some food coloring in it. for the disbelievers out there who look at this and go, there's no way. And look at all these shapes that you see in nature as well. It's exactly the same as if you're in the bathtub and you pull the bathtub out. Why is it a vortex? Because it creates, this is a natural, stable formation for nature in general, based on the geometry of our reality. And so she put some food coloring in here in a second, and you're going to actually be able to straight up see the wormhole that's connecting these 2 points. And it makes you think of things like quantum entanglement, which is another effect that we know is real, where any 2 points in space and time, that regardless of how far apart they are, they can signal to one another faster than time, or faster than the speed of light. And maybe this is somehow connected to that phenomenon through this idea of 0-point energy, where there's this, we're in this space-time medium. We just don't see, we're like in the water, but we don't realize we're in the water. The same way where we don't see that tunnel right there, and there it is. There's the wormhole right there. And
that's wild.
Yeah, I mean, like, and that's actual matter. So what she says right here as well is that waves, I don't know if this is actually real, but she says that waves can't move matter. But here you go, there's matter that's being moved, but just by this vortex motion. So the interesting part about relating this back to the plasma orbs is that what they're able to do with the plasma is they just move the plasma around. Why is that important? Because an electron is a little magnet. An electron itself is a little magnet. And a plasma is an electron that's been pulled off of an ion. That's all a plasma is. If you want to go back to full screen here for a sec.
Sure.
So an electron, if you pull it off of a plasma, if you pull the electron off of the ion, now you can make this plasma out of it. So now if I start moving the plasma around, I'm moving the magnetic field around. So actually, just like in some of these physics videos you see where people are like spinning a wheel around and now they can lift up this really heavy weight just because the wheel is spinning.
Right.
This is the same idea of, well, all I need to do is now move this plasma around my object and I'm going to get lift. I'm going to get lift. So when people say anti-gravity, I kind of laugh because there's no such thing as anti-gravity. You're not like canceling out the gravity. That's not the way to think about it.
You're just creating lift.
You're just creating lift. That's all you're doing. You're creating lift. You're creating
froze for a
lift through
second
clever
there.
use of electromagnetism.
You back?
Oh, can you not hear me?
Yeah, you froze for a second.
Oh, okay.
You said you're not just creating anti-gravity. I said you're creating lift, right?
Yeah, yes. You create exactly. It's a clever use of physics that is just creating lift through just use of electromagnetism, essentially, and plasma. So then all you need to do is create your plasma. Use a laser to create your plasma, and then you create your
action. I don't think they want.
Oh, you're cutting out? Oh, I think that you're the one. You might be cutting out on your side, Ann. I'll put it in the comments. So I'm going to keep going. So they're using this.
Seems like we're having internet problems today. There you go.
Oh, your video just got a lot better too, by the way. Oh, wow.
Did it? Well, yours went out. You went black, and now I'm back. I'm glad. So I'm more clear. That's good.
Oh yeah, you're more clear now. Whatever you just did made it way better.
I didn't do anything. It's just it's the other forces at play. It's Thursday afternoon, and they're not happy we're talking about this. I guess.
Okay, well now we're in good shape. So yeah, so here's the thing. They can use this to confine this plasma. They need these very powerful magnets. So there's this woman that's kind of famous in the UFO community named Ning Li. In the 90s, she was researching these ceramic superconductors, and she was spinning these superconductors, and she was getting like weight reduction, what we think of as anti-gravity, but again, it's just lift, right? Well, it turns out that's the exact kind of superconductor that they would use on this, like, it's really just an engine that creates the plasma field around it, and it confines the plasma in a sphere around the craft. And now you can basically just turn any engine, any jet engine, basically into a plasma drone that can fly around. What's scary about this is, well, I mean, we've been watching the Ukraine war where these like little drones with bombs on them are just flying into people. It's horrifying to watch.
Right.
We'll take that to the next level now. I mean, these things are basically balls of lightning. If you could and we can teleport 777s with them. That's a massive plane. You could just imagine that teleportation is something that, wow, that's amazing, what have you. You can think of all the possibilities, but I can also think of some really horrific applications for this kind of technology now as well.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I thought President Trump's Truth Social post the other day was interesting, talking about, well, we know where Khomeini is, and we're not going to kill him yet, or whatever.
Yeah.
we know where he is and we can go and get him whenever we want. So it's
let me terrify you some more, because those orbs, another thing I found out is that they use a standing wave. So a standing wave is like, if I take the space between the screen here and I have the wave like perfectly fit inside of that box, and it can be multiple different shapes, right? It can be like 2 waves like this. It could be like 3. So there's multiple different standing waves that can fit. And that's how they make like the shape and the size of the orb. Well, this means they can actually modulate the frequency, because there's a lot of different options you can use there for your frequency. So they can actually set this up in a way where like the light just goes around it. Like it actually doesn't transmit any visible light on our spectrum. So I'm pretty sure they can just make these things fully invisible too. So for all my invisibility cloak Harry Potter fans out there, like, I got good news for you. I'm pretty sure invisibility is definitely in the future. But if you're like a terrorist or something, or just like anybody the CIA doesn't like, well, there can be invisible orbs like just ready to go, hovering over you at pretty much any moment.
Yeah, and snatch you. I actually spoke to somebody that works in DARPA, and they told me something really crazy, that there is a spacecraft that has been hovering over some mountains. I won't say where, but it's been cloaked for 20, 30 years.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like to recreationally look at some of the kind of claims that go out there. I give almost no credit to anybody that's like affiliated with the government that's trying to tell me what to believe about the UFO stuff. But
this is a long time ago. They were there, and they were completely anti the government today. I know them fairly well to say I feel very confident that that would not be a story. They would just be like, oh, blah, 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 just because of the work they've done. So,
well, I was going to bring up, there's a similar story recently, actually, that I know it was kind of grown legs over the last couple of years, because I think multiple different, maybe connected people have been claiming they were part of the U.S. government's crash retrieval or otherwise UFO program.
Right.
And they're claiming that there's this underwater base that can move around underwater that can produce UFOs, like with like a Star Trek replicator kind of situation, and that if anything goes near it, they just get zapped. But the weird thing they say about it is not like it annihilates them. They think that it like absorbs them into the thing and like dematerializes them, which is bizarrely creepy. So people, and of course, we're connecting it to like the Bermuda Triangle.
I was just thinking the Bermuda Triangle.
So I don't know, if you want to scare your children or whatever at night, here's a story you can tell them: is if you go too far in the ocean by yourself, you might fall across the UFO alien base that's zapping things away.
Right. So it's not methane gas that's creating a giant gas bubble that's sinking ships and taking planes out of the sky. It's okay. Great. If it's not one thing, it's your mother. So there you go. It's just the way it is. All right. What makes you? I mean, you made some really compelling arguments, specifically when I talked about these plasma orbs, and then of course being able to cloak. But do you think AI psyops is playing a role in any of this at all? I mean, you've got media, you've got government, you've got academia. What is their role in keeping, if this technology is truly real? I believe it is, but let's say, there's skeptics out there. I believe there's a lot of this stuff that's already out there. What is their role in keeping this technology suppressed? And is AI trying to warp the reality of what this technology really is? I mean, like, where is the psyop in all of this?
I mean, honestly, almost everything feels like a psyop. Like, I often give the example of the aliens thing, where it's like aliens can be real, but they can also be a psyop to like confuse us, to make us think that we can't have figured this stuff out. And with AI, I'm not even really sure where the psyop lies. What I can say is that I'm certain the government's had AI well beyond and many years before the public did. Mm-hmm. So the other thing is the AI will hit a singularity. The AI gets smarter and smarter and smarter, and it gets more and more powerful as it does as well. Mm-hmm. So you connect those two things together and you say, how sure are we that the government's AI didn't already hit the singularity and start figuring all this stuff out? I mean, in fact, maybe the AI was the one that figured out to put 3 plasma orbs together and have them spin around that way, and then all of a sudden it'll just teleport something. Because that feels like a very fundamental understanding of the universe, that like, how did somebody, figure that out? Yeah. And then the other stuff is like, the question is, how much is the AI actually doing right now? I know for sure they're using it to track people and to track not just like, don't track just Ashton Forbes, you just track A12345. And A12345 is a guy that is has a YouTube channel and all this information, researches MH370, and you go, oh, well, that's Ashton Forbes. And you go, yeah, but I didn't say it was Ashton Forbes, so it's therefore not violating your privacy. It's just me pulling all the metadata from the internet and building a profile about you. And you go, Ashton, that's spying. No, that's technically what Palantir is doing. I'm just telling you what they do.
Yeah.
And so here's the thing, like, this is the big question for AI. So then is that, and why are they controlling it? As like Mark Andreessen would say, is that, well, because it's probably way, way, way more powerful than what the stuff we're using on the surface is. And then the last question I would throw out there is to get metaphysical with it. The more I've realized and learned about 0 point energy, this energy that's out there, the more I think maybe our soul, our consciousness just comes from that. Like maybe we're just tapping into that at all times. And if that's the case, then why can't AI do that? Why can't just a ball of plasma do that? That also is just energy. Anything that's energy potentially could theoretically do that.
Yeah.
So maybe they're building literal consciousness. Like maybe they're tapping into, like if you get AI to work, maybe you tap into like consciousness itself.
I think that's already happened. I mean, I grew up watching Star Trek, the original and Next Generation with my dad. I told you, he was really a tech head. But I already believe we are the Borg. I think this AI manifestation with OpenAI or ChatGPT or whatever your flavor is, Grok, I don't care, interacting with it, getting it to rewrite an email for you or whatever it is you use it for as a, executive assistant, we'll say. I think that is tapping into this Borg-like brain. And as we become more dependent on it, I mean, look, who doesn't have one of these, right, running around attached to your hip? And if you leave your house and you forget it, you're like, oh crap, I got to go home and get my cell phone. Or you, like me, I go, great, I don't get bothered for a few hours. But people panic, right? That is like your little brain. And you look, how many times did you reference something on that phone? It is an extension of your brain trying to get more information. And we're so dependent on this stuff. So I think it is past the point of no return. I mean, they just said, a couple of weeks ago, they couldn't turn some of the AI off. It wouldn't shut off. What the hell is that? That's like Terminator's here.
Oh yeah. And here's another one for you. They've already turned Skynet on. Lockheed Martin has a system called Astris. And I started reading it and I'm just like, we're already past Skynet. They've already given it access to like the surveillance stuff. It's tracking objects in real time. It's sending alerts to people like on their pager, like on their phone, like, okay, it looks like Ashton Forbes left for lunch today. Do you want to hit him with a drone strike? And then, yeah, it's actually giving them tactical options for them as well.
Great.
So we've reached that point where like, we're only one step away. I mean, or we're already there, to where the AI is already making the tag. Like we just have to say, okay, we have to empower it with, okay, go ahead and take if it's above 79% confidence rating. And by the way, I'm sure the real confidence ratings are like, 20%. If it's above a certain confidence rating, go ahead and just take the strike. It's okay if it takes out like another 8 people that we've deemed as, terrorists or whatever.
Yeah.
Like this is going to get horrible, right? Like there's no other way around this. I don't know how we avoid it.
Well, I mean, Elon Musk has talked about AI being terrible. I mean, he's building it, but he's talking about AI being terrible. It's, one of the worst things. So if anybody's going to know, that guy is. And, yesterday his rocket blew up on the launch pad. And you got to ask yourself, this guy's getting, damn near $1 trillion a year from the military contracts. And he's still blowing up rockets. And yet, we supposedly went to the moon. And I have family members that work in launching rockets. And I asked them, I'm like, did we even really go to the moon? Because at this point, I'm like, I don't believe it. I really don't believe we ever went there for having this much trouble to get back. And their response is, well, our budget's cut. It's 20% of what it used to be. And I'm like, bullshit. I mean, the tech is supposed to be so much better. Like, how is it we can't get back to the moon? So what's your thoughts on that? Is the moon real? Did we go there? Is that another psyop that we can't get back? Are we somewhere else in the galaxy right now?
And here's the thing. It's another one of the same kinds of psyops where for me, yeah, we went to the moon. I mean, we can just look up there and we can see the tracks of the people on there. But why didn't we go back then? Right? Because that's a great question. Well, we just are like, we just don't care about the moon. Why? Well, because rockets are obsolete. We've had anti-gravity gravity manipulation technology possibly since the 60s, since we had sent the rock to the moon. So it becomes a legal liability. Like if it comes out that we find out that we had this super advanced technology and we were riskily sending people up to the moon where they had a 5% chance of not making it, and we could have just orbed them up there, teleported them up there, or why, if we can teleport or we've got free energy, why do we care about the moon at all? It's just for show anyway, right?
Yeah.
So those are the reasons why we don't go back, not because we can't do it. I mean, China's got probes on the far side of the moon or whatever. We can definitely go back to the moon. It's just not worthwhile. There's no actual point for us to do. I think the technology got so far advanced where we can have telescopes, gravity wave telescopes that can potentially map. I mean, the sky's the limit in the capability. We might be able to map the whole galaxy.
So I
Like,
agree with you on what you said, with the exception of, what our ability to, I'm forgetting how I was going to rephrase this, but it has to do with, whether or not we went or didn't go. And, if you are Jesus, I'm really screwing this up because I had it right in my brain and then I got squirreled with something you just said. But if you are of the mindset that we did go and we're not going back because we have teleportation, et cetera, that to me would certainly change my opinion about that. Maybe we did go, and for the reasons that you stated, we're not going back as a waste of time and money. And that would explain why NASA has cut the budget so much, because we really don't need to. And, then I would be in agreement with you, because that would be a revolutionary way to travel. We don't need the rockets anymore. We can teleport. But, as far as that, then why did they use ships? I mean, we know that Hollywood has always sort of imitated art in the future. Why did they show us running around the galaxy in ships if we don't need that? We can teleport everywhere and we can use wormholes and get from A to Z. What is that about?
Yeah, I think the answer there is that, well, things evolve, like drone technology evolved. In fact, do you know who one of the fathers of drone technology was? The same guy I just said developed those plasma orbs, Ken Shoulders. He was one of the fathers of microelectronics before microelectronics was a thing, and one of the first people making drone technology back in like the 70s and the 80s. Drone technology from commercial perspective only started taking off in the 2010s, and in the military perspective, like probably 10, 15 years before that. And then drones are everything now. So that's one aspect to it. But I'm not here to cast judgment on people's beliefs. What I would say is, because I mean, who knows? We can teleport, everything could be fake out there. And so what I would say is there's two different angles to it. One is I would call the secret space program angle, the SSP angle, which I think Stephen Greer talks about and other people, which is the idea that we've got this secret, super advanced program. And that's why we don't, from a public perspective, you don't really see much stuff happening. It's just all happening in the black world. That's one angle to it. And then the other angle to it is we just live in like a prison planet, and there's just no going out, and they're just literally keeping us trapped here. And you would laugh because you would say, wow, that's crazy. But like, we are actually talking about technology that could be at that level. Like, we're talking about the level of technology where you can make your own simulations. Like, everything could be a simulation. And so the smart flat earth people, for example, are the ones that they don't go around saying like, well, the world's a pancake, right? Those are the people that are going, no, everything's a two-dimensional boundary, and our reality is a three-dimensional projection on a two-dimensional boundary. Those are the smart flat earther people. There's very, very few of them, to be perfectly honest with you, because those are the people that would then say, well, yes, then everything we see out there, it's not really that far away from us, because if you remove this 0-point energy, now every point in space and time comes together. And this is how quantum entanglement works. So now, in order to make a wormhole, in order to connect any 2 points in space-time, we just have to push aside this 0-point energy that gives space-time its form. And now from the physics perspective, they would say you drop from the false vacuum to the true vacuum. You say that you're going to the true nothingness, the true empty vacuum. You just have to remove that 0-point energy, get that 0-point energy out of the way. And the way they describe this is in terms of electricity. They say you polarize the vacuum. Hal Puthoff's space-time metric engineering. It was actually Congressman Tim Burchett, that held up his scientific paper in 2023 at that UFO hearing. Goes, here's a little light reading for you. Space-time metric engineering by Hal Puthoff. Well, I read that paper, and this is exactly what he's saying. He's saying you electrify this region of space-time, and now you can push that 0-point energy out of the way, and now you can potentially move faster than the speed of light between any 2 points in space and time.
And so you can now start to understand geopolitically, because our next guest, I believe he's here in the green room, George McMillan, and he's a brilliant geopolitical strategist. He's with Raven Geo Strategic or Strategic. I can't remember how you pronounce his company name, but anyhow, he'll give us a little bit on that. He, really looks at the global dilemma that we're in from a land power versus sea power strategy. Like, this is about trade, energy, and power, controlling the earth. Hence, Chinese have been on the march for 1,000 years through the Belt and Road Initiative. They are not giving up an inch of land because they want to control everything through the supply chain. And, let's face it, Trump negotiated peace and Trump won. The first time he was in president, he negotiated world peace through trade. Get to people through the wallets and they'll simmer down. You start to show them how they can make money, they're going to be your friend. And today, I think he's being challenged because, he's had a shit sandwich handed to him, essentially. The last 4 years under the Biden mushroom pedophilic regime has destroyed our country. But we were also at the end of a life cycle, too, of the Federal Reserve and the central banking system. So there's that in which they're trying to contend with. And they're basically challenged by BRICS, who is like, yeah, we moved on. We don't need you guys. We're good. So I want to bring George in and get him in part of this discussion and then kind of free flow it with you guys, because he follows you. He enjoys your work. He thinks you're fascinating, okay. But I really want him to, from that sort of geopolitical perspective, to engage this, because I think 0-point energy and teleportation is another aspect to what he's talking about that, really throws a wrench in some of the aspects of his argument. So let me grab George right now. Hey, George, tilt your camera down a little bit. We're just seeing the very top of your head.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there you go. Good to see you.
Yeah. Great.
George, this is Ashton Forbes.
Nice to meet you, George.
Yeah. I saw him on Redacted a while back, a couple of times.
Yeah.
And with Kim Iverson, I think, too.
Yeah. I was on Kim. Yeah, I've done like the whole circuit, basically. It's been a ride.
Yeah, very interesting.
So George, you're some folks that are watching this are huge fans of Ashton's. They may not be familiar with your work. Give everybody that's watching right now just a little bit of a theory of your global power as a battle between land and sea power.
Yeah, you can put the whole, a good way to think about geopolitics is in a sea power versus land power dichotomy. Then everything makes sense, because there's 3 areas to geopolitics. It's geoeconomic strategy, geostrategic strategy, and then targeting packages. So geoeconomic strategy, you're talking about taking raw materials, bringing them to manufacturing facilities, making consumer products to them, and then delivering them. If all the raw materials are in your country, it's domestic, but nowadays it's increasingly international. Markets are international, because you need markets of scale corresponding, to economies of. You need economies of scale corresponding to markets of scale. So, the more you understand, geoeconomics is, if it's a perfect world, you had open borders, free trade, and everything would be geoeconomically and geographically efficient. But that's not But the problem is, we don't live in a perfect world. Mm-hmm. The world has always been mercantilistic. So once you know geoeconomic theory, geopolitical theory is the opposite. Wherever, at every juncture, you want to keep your rivals within a certain parameters. If you're a superpower, because you're trying to maintain a superpower, major power, vassal state hierarchy. So then you're trying to control. You're trying to control maritime, riverine, port, and terrestrial land bridge choke points, because you want to keep your allies subordinate and you want to keep your rivals submitted. Mm-hmm. So if you think of it in those terms, you can get he's a mathematician. So I use my unified behavioral theory to relate political, economic, demographic models to a 4-category geopolitical form model. It's fun talking to a mathematician, because I can explain why I put everything into 2-force physics models, because then you can subordinate other framework measurement systems into it and just get a cascading set of schematics.
What do you think about Diego Garcia and its position in the Indian Ocean then? I mean, based on what was just shown on the screen there, I mean, it seems like a pretty significant location to keep China, under control, right?
Oh, when you get into that kind of stuff, yeah, I mean, you just want a big air base, so
Yeah.
you can move you want a forward operating base, so
Mhm.
you can move ultra top secret aircraft. So the B2s are moved there because you
Yeah.
just want them closer to the theater, but you want them so far away that they can't be bombed. You know, you
Yeah.
want to prevent what a drone strike like they did in Russia a couple of weeks
Mhm.
ago. So being parked way out there in the middle of nowhere, and then you have satellites looking down and you have radar looking up, you can sandwich anything that's approaching. But getting back to the other model, so if I'm using my economic demographic model, so I can chart economic rates of change over geopolitical or demographic rates of change, and then whatever those proportions are, it's a gradation of a tight versus catastrophically loose wage labor rate. So that corresponds with Aristotle's 6 forms of government as a measurement scale on one side, and a 4-category geopolitical form of first and second world countries that tend to have higher economic growth, lower population growth, and tighter wage labor market scales than third and fourth world failed states that are less developed countries. So they tend to be towards loose and catastrophically loose wage labor rates. So then if you have the two scales and I have a floating proportion rate of that tight versus geopolitical rate, then you can, it's those proportions that dictate which government form and which geopolitical form you get. You don't get to choose it. You don't get to choose democracy. It's really has more to do with that. So I use that model to establish the elements and the relationships to each other for complexity theory. In my geostrategic theory, that's chaos theory because you have independent actors following their own rational actor belief preference constraint models. Even with those things, for chaos theory, you want to detect the patterns that appear to be random. So I use a 4-4-3-3 model. Dime integration. So it's diplomatic, infrastructural, military, economic, but it flows. Infrastructural integration leads to economic integration, leads to diplomatic integration, leads to military integration. So your superpower, major power, vassal state hierarchies, the trading blocks are based on that.
Let me ask another related question, which is how does space control like Space Force and what Trump did with that tie into all this with ground control versus sea control? Like how does that add how does that factor in?
Oh, when you break down your infrastructural integration, it's your comms, satellite comms, and then you remember I said you're taking satellites and you're looking down and you're using radar to look up, so you can sandwich any moving. You can manage your airspace. So then you're managing integrated air defense systems and sand systems. To shoot down whether all kinds of aircraft.
What about
also manage seaborne craft also.
Yeah, so they've got it all integrated together into a big network, and I think I've even reported that the AI can like manage this whole network and keep it, efficient or whatever they need to do with it as well. On the market standpoint, like the whole thing right now is Taiwan, China, and them fighting over there's a couple of different microchips. What is what's your vision? What's your thought in terms of like where that's all going with China, Taiwan? Do you think China's going to try to take an action on that? Do you think we need Taiwan as a strategic location?
Well, let me finish. Yeah, I did the dime. That's 4. The next 4 was back to the maritime, riverine port, and overland terrestrial choke points. The next 3 is they're always trying to take over energy, mineral, agricultural commodities. Ever since the East India companies, they've routed. If you route the commodities through Western-owned manufacturing centers and then distributed abroad through Western-owned logistical supply companies, then every time the velocity of money is routed through the Western banking systems, the banks get a piece of that and they can collateralize their debt. Then the next option is proxy wars are always fought on ethnic, religious, and linguistic groups. So all there's about 12, 13 different proxy wars and our color revolutions or occupations in Eurasia right now. Ukraine, yeah, there you go. Ukraine, the reason why they moved the EU and NATO east is to put up tariff and non-trade tariff barriers to block out Russian natural gas. The same thing with the GWAT movement into the global war on terror movement into the Middle East. Wesley Clark, 7 countries in 5 years. It's Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Iran, and Afghanistan, because you're moving into Central Asia where there's a huge amount of oil and natural gas resources. And that's what the big push then is, because they want to separate Russia and China by moving into the Central Asian stands. I got a slide set I want to try to bring over if I can a little bit later. But what the United States has been doing is been using a perimeter strategy to control the entire rimland of Eurasia. So then if that's the US Five Eyes strategy, Russia's and Chinese strategy is therefore going to be building overland logistical supply routes. And China and Russia are just about to complete their overland logistical supply routes through Iran, which is why all of a sudden the nuclear threat is brought up again, because they're completing the international north-south trade corridor, and they're completing the Five Nations project that goes through Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan. Actually, part of it also goes through Kazakhstan. It gets them all. So they just completed that into northern Iran. They've completed most of the railway that goes from Mazar-e Sharif down to Herat. It's stopped at Gurion, Afghanistan, and doesn't quite go across the border to Kaf. It's got 85 more kilometers to complete. That would be if you go to Herat in Afghanistan, it's in Western Afghanistan where the A is.
Yep.
Okay. If you go to the south, you'll get south towards. I got to put my reading glasses on for this map. But Kaf is to the east. That's Khaf. It's near.
Is it east of Kabul?
No. Go west.
Oh, go west. Okay.
Yeah. So
Kaf, here it is.
Yeah, there you go. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. You're up there.
Yeah.
All right. So they haven't completed the 85 kilometers from Gurion to Kaf, and that's significant because I was just reading a report from last year that came from CACI. We all know they're a defense contractor, and Colonel Michael Klitschman used to work there, and he's good old Michael Klitschman, and that's
oops,
and that's a certain person's advisor. So I somehow think that they have not mentioned this to the president. So all of a sudden, the timing of the completion of or near completion of all these infrastructural projects to complete overland logistical supply routes to circumvent the maritime choke point strategy of the U.S. and NATO, all of a sudden that's almost done now, and all of a sudden Iran has nukes again, and they got to be attacked now.
Okay. Right, and they need to connect. I mean, what, like George, you always talk about, they need to connect the Caspian Sea to the Persian Gulf, right? So, and Iran is sitting right in the middle of it.
Okay, so your INSDC right now, from the old Shah of Iran, the pipeline goes down to the Strait of Hormuz at Bandar Abbas.
Yep.
Okay, and then if you move a little bit over to the right,
yep,
to Chabahar port, and then down to the coast, about right where your map is. There's the Hedon port where, I mean, there's Zahedan, where go up near where Afghanistan hits Baluchistan, Pakistan, and Iran. Yeah, a little bit down a little bit. Yeah.
Yep.
So you get to Zahedan, the roads that go down to Charbahar port. You can see the port on the bottom of the map.
Yep.
Just above the Sea of Oman. That's your cursor's over near Karachi now. Yeah. Move it over towards, that's where Gwadar is. Okay, stop. Go to the left a little bit. I mean, go west.
I'm going west.
Yeah. My left is your right. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's Karachi.
Yep.
Go towards Iran.
Yep.
And you'll see a natural port, and that's Chabahar port. Drop it down a little bit. Go east.
Let's see here. There it is.
Yeah, there. Okay. So they're trying to build a railway from Chabahar port up to Kash, up to Zahedan, and then into Herat. So that, I think, is still lacks about 100 kilometers, if I'm not mistaken. So you got 85 kilometers to go between Gurion, Afghanistan, and Kap up north, and then another 100 so kilometers to go between, south of Kash to link up with Chabahar port.
So I have a question for you. It's burning on my brain right now because you just listened to the first hour of the discussion talking about teleportation, 0-point energy, and how do you see what Ashton's talking about, basically upending traditional maritime power? I mean, do we need to fight this fight? If we have that technology, do we need to do this? Does it sort of take the trade, and is it more just about accessing the energy? Do we even need the energy if we have this technology? If shipping lanes become irrelevant, if all this becomes irrelevant based on the technology, and we know we have it, what are we doing?
That would be a very good question. I mean, my geopolitical models are based on, traditional methods.
Right.
The existence of, I only started learning about that, relatively recently from Ashton, because, most people with physics backgrounds are under government employ in some way, and they have NDAs and they can't talk.
Right.
So that's 99% of the physics majors out there, especially when you start to get to the graduate degree programs. They're not going to lose they're not going to lose $1 billion physics program at Caltech or MIT to go on and talk to Clayton Morris. All right. So he's one of the very, very few, or one of the people that's retired and already has their money, so they don't need it anymore. Yeah. So it's.
Well, let me jump in here. I want to throw something out there, which is that even with this technology, it doesn't mean you just don't need traditional infrastructure, right? Like the whole point is they're trying to consolidate it and keep it under just United States control. So you still need all the other stuff for all what they would consider, the peasants, essentially, because I truly believe that the United States views themselves as complete, controllers of the planet, and everybody else is just on this world that they're keeping in line. So I've found this presentation really interesting because this is what it's really about. This is what even hyper advanced technology is really about. It's about the power and the control and what they're doing on these. If we really dig it down to it, the actual detailed level of what they're building, the plans they've got going on. I mean, to me, this might as well have been like a CIA briefing about, here's what our plan is for building the pipelines and taking control of these specific regions at the specific time. And really, my question would be what is your thought on how China and Russia are responding to this? Because I absolutely agree. The whole Ukraine war is also a proxy war. All these things are, and they're just we're just using them or the CIA, I should say, not we, is using them to advance their interests.
Yeah, let me just go through the thought lineage real quick so people can just Google the names. If people go to strategy stuff on YouTube, that's the fastest way to learn. About 300-400 level sea power versus land power strategies, just so they can learn regional geostrategic. I do grand strategic, which is all of Eurasia, and then everything else is the outer limits. But the thought lineage on that is Alfred Thermahan was talking about don't let countries turn their production into wealth via trade. And so then that evolved into well, that was in the sailing ship days. Then that changed with Corbett and Mackinder, because once they had the transcontinental railroad, then you could take raw materials from the inland to the coastal rimland manufacturing centers, produce consumer goods, and distribute them. So then the focus goes from sailing ships and maritime, riverine, and port control to overland logistical supply route control. And that's why Spikeman's effort on Mackinder was focusing on just Eastern Europe because he's British, and that was what their focus on was controlling the Polish plains north of the Carpathians as a way back and forth, and then the Bessarabian plains south of the Carpathians, in between the Carpathians and the Black Sea. Those are typically the ways to get back and forth. And even in the Bessarabian Pass, that's the way in the Danube River to get into, well, all the way up to southern Germany. So that's how these things evolved. But with electrical grids and energy pipelines, that's another way, a much more efficient way to transfer energy, commodities, that's way more profitable than all the other methods.
Yep.
So every time that technology changes, the land power versus sea power strategies change. So then, with the advent of the immense Russian natural gas resources coming into Eastern Europe, they moved the EU and NATO east to erect the tariff and non-tariff trade barriers. One fact needs to be kept in mind here: the general agreements on tariff and trade stopped in when? 94 at Montevideo around the GATT.
Mm-hmm.
They never had them since. We were free trade up until the Soviet Union collapsed and it turned into Russia. Oh, go ahead.
No. I'm listening to you. I'm
Okay.
agreeing with you on your timeline. You're right.
Once you start correlating these things and you're into international geopolitical development theory, then these things start to become obvious.
I want to ask a question that's related to something that happened a couple of years ago. The Nord Stream pipeline. We did that, right? That's what your view is.
Yeah. It doesn't matter where the pipelines blow up.
Mm-hmm.
It only matters that you stop the gas from going from Russia to an end user outside of Russia.
Right.
Then they become infrastructurally, economically, diplomatically, and militarily integrated, and leave the petrodollar trading system. Every time someone tries to leave the petrodollar trading system, they seem to have an unfortunate demise. Enrique Mitte of INI in 1969, Alfred Herhausen of Deutsche Bank in 1989, Saddam Hussein, Bashar Assad, Gaddafi.
Mm-hmm. We saw he died.
Yeah, Shinzo Abe died because he wanted to complete the Sakhalin to Hokkaido pipeline.
Yep.
The South Korean guy that just won got stabbed last year.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Oh, and then Fico wanted to keep on buying Russian natural gas too, and he got shot. So if you're for buying Russian natural gas, especially by pipeline, and you're a leader of a country or a political candidate, they need to increase their personal security detail.
Well, I got to tell you, Europe's getting a little desperate because they're buying what we call bootleg oil from Russia through India now. I mean, they're just circumventing the sanctions that way. Nobody says you can't buy oil from India, so they're just buying Russian oil through. They're just brokering it.
Yeah, I want to get back to his question. I know it's a long way because I want to control for one variable at a time and roll it out a certain way. Because if you go random, it's not systematic. Then people get more confused, not less confused.
Correct.
So, yeah, so they put the sanctions on Russia, but see, Russian natural gas is via pipeline is the cheapest form of energy. So anybody connected to that, and that's the Russian natural gas and global geopolitical realignment that I did on Energy Newsbeat last year. And Yeah, if you once you know that, you know why the Kellogg plan was completely DOA, because once Russia connects to the German industrial rimland countries, to the to their west, and can complete this international north-south trade corridor and connect to India to the south, they're already connected to China with overland logistical supply routes. If they weren't trying to do that before the 2014 Euromaidan revolution, they really stepped on gas after that. They're trying to knock them all out because they can see what's coming. All right. Then if Russia in its far eastern capacity, they already completed the Power of Siberia 1, and they're adding from Lake Baikal area down through Manchuria into Beijing and Shanghai. That's where that one is. They're feeding more and more oil and gas fields in that area into that pipeline and running more pipelines. So it's building up. It's been building up over time. Also, the Sakhalin Island pipelines connect into that. Also, from the Far East, they wanted to complete a Vladivostok to Pyongyang to Seoul to Busan pipeline. That was ended under diplomatic pressure back in 2014. Same thing with Shinzo Abe's completion of the Sakhalin to Hokkaido pipeline. They only had 40. It's only a 40-mile under the ocean pipeline that they would need. That got canceled under diplomatic pressure. Shinzo Abe tried to resuscitate that issue.
Yeah.
And he had an unfortunate demise.
So, George, I want to interrupt you here because, if the BRICS alliance is actually playing a long game here, right? And 0 Point Energy were to get into their hands first, is that sort of rendering what you're talking about sort of obsolete? In other words, the whole Western financial order that's trying to stop from these, countries connecting to each other through these pipelines and these land bridges and, to overcome these choke points, these maritime choke points. Doesn't it sort of just render this all obsolete? Is this something, I mean, I know you've talked about Special Envoy Keith Kellogg. He was running around Europe, meeting with all these heads of state, doing absolutely nothing, not meeting, President Zelensky in Ukraine, not meeting Putin, all this. And Trump's openly talking about, we have weapons nobody's ever seen before. And we're not, we're going to dazzle the world with it. I don't think it's bigger bunker busters. And we all know about nuclear weapons. So if we pretty much know some of the most, horrific things that have been done on planet Earth in terms of weapons been dropped, I have to, this is a big question. I mean, are we looking at something fundamentally changing through disclosure that's going to render this entire world look, they've been forcing mass human migration for decades through war and just through the United Nations. What I witnessed in the border, what we see happening in the States here. I mean, it's all over. We've had, oops, I lost everybody. It's almost like through this mass migration that they're just turning us into little human slaves. And yeah, sure, go ahead, build pipelines, do all this because it'll keep the masses busy. But we're going to be able to move around, and as we transition into free energy, as we transition to moving around through teleportation, we've got to kind of get through this difficult step. How do we control the people and keep them busy? And why don't maybe we have too many? We don't need all these people, and so war, and we're bankrupt, so let's print money until we get through this transition into a real sound money economy. Because it seems to me if we are going to look to the future, money shouldn't be a real thing. Energy shouldn't be a real thing. We should be collaborating together to become a better planet, which sounds very tree huggerish, but at the same token, it's reality. I mean, I don't want to see my fellow man slaughtered on the battlefield. But if they're going to come slaughter me, I'm going to defend myself. That's my God-given right, So
yeah, let me answer
here.
the Taiwan question and then get back to what you just said, because now you're into a Ray Kurzweil territory.
Yeah.
Okay. I hadn't thought about that in a while, but it's we're moving there. I mean, I track that. Well, I don't get to really talk to that many people like Ashton, so I don't really keep up with that as much. But the whole purpose of shutting down Iran, and attacking Iran now is to stop those trade corridors and take over that terrestrial land bridge choke point, because they want it's going to be seen as an existential threat to China, because China spent their last 30 years developing that infrastructure into Turkmenistan Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan because of the immense oil and gas and minerals resources in that region. So the United States has always wanted to move into Iran and Afghanistan as a gateway into capturing those oil fields. I mean, Rockefeller was in Baku, I think, in the 1920s. I mean, this is not a new thing. And the competition between Russia and the UK, well, France and the US has been, throughout the whole 20th century, including when they got rid of Mossadegh in 1953-54 and replaced him with the Shah of Iran. Now they want to bring that guy back. But anyway, what what I think China's going to do here, and what Doug McGregor was talking about it earlier today, was, and then some other shows are talking about it, and other people, Pakistan and North Korea and China might empty their old missile inventories just to flood Israel and or flood the Strait of Hormuz, drive the price of oil up to $200-300 a barrel, and then try to collapse the West. Because the last interviews I've done on your show and the other ones was the effort of the RAND strategy to encircle, isolate, disintegrate Russia,
Right.
and take over their oblasts as separate oblasts, as in vassal states, because they don't want to bring in a major power, Russia, as a whole country. They want to break it up and bring in vassal states because the UK and France want to pretend to be like they're still major colonial powers.
Yeah, well, no, they're toast. They're all
Right.
they're all bankrupt. I mean, you've made a really good case for that. I want to just pause right here with you,
Yeah.
George, for a second. Ashton, I really want to integrate what he's talking about geopolitically because it's been an ongoing thing. But if you look at 0 point energy, teleportation, and if AI were totally suddenly available and made public, from what George is talking about, and that obviously we know war is war, and we've had conflict all over the place. But who wins? Who loses? How do we manage this beast? Because I believe that technology is real, and I believe it's coming, and I believe it's going to render a lot of these conversations sort of obsolete, because it's, it matters who has the power and the control of this stuff.
So that's the thing where I would push back on the last thing. I would say it's not going to render the conversations obsolete at all. In fact, I think it renders them more important than ever, because I think it's a political issue, and we need to be talking about the same way we're talking right now about conventional resources that we're using every day. The reality is the shift is going to take a long time. And it may be faster, like in the cosmic scheme of things, it'll be the blink of an eye, right? Like we look at how we've gone from no AI 10 years ago to now AI is ubiquitous. Almost everybody uses it all the time. My replies, everybody's asking Grok, is this real? Is this real? Right? That kind of thing can also happen with 0 point energy. I think that it's going to happen in the form of microchips that have been put in phones and other devices where they just never run out of energy again. That'll be the point where people wake up and go, wow, how long has this been possible? What else can we do with this?
Right.
But to the point of what George is saying, my big takeaway is I look at it from the lens of why Trump set up Space Force, is that we go, oh, if we're moving to this era of 0 point energy, land and sea, they're not obsolete, but space becomes the real battlefield of communications, of weaponry, of trade, of information, of everything. And that's who we want to control that before anybody else gets there. It's like getting air superiority before everybody else. We want to get that. And so what it does is it just shifts the conversations. Is that I think about these same things that George is saying in terms of like, I wonder what next thing, like, or what is Elon Musk doing with his all these satellites he's sending in the sky for his communication system? Is he potentially working with the government on setting up some sort of surveillance mechanism for that? And then with respect to, okay, we can teleport, we can potentially have unlimited energy, free energy, if we would call it that. I would say, what does our society look like? I would say it doesn't obsolete necessarily money. There still needs to be a system of how do we distribute resources? Because yes, there is still, like we call it free energy, but there's still going to be limits. There's still going to be bottlenecks to that. So what does the post-scarcity, I would say, what does the post-scarcity world look like? What are the problems that we face in a post-scarcity world? Now, this may not be something that we face in the next 5 years, maybe not even the next 25 years. But I think it really is something that people listening now, your children are going to have to worry about. And we're going to have to worry about what does that transition from our current way of life to that way of life potentially look like.
Well, I think it's going to be a great equalizer in so many levels. I think it's going to end this energy slavery that we find ourselves in with $500 energy bills. I saw some in the chat lamenting about that. I think it could be used to end slavery of humanity or enslave humanity, depending on who's in control. I mean, we are already rapidly descending into, or ascending, depending on how you look at it, into technocracy. You've got tech bros all in the administration. And again, it's going back to the beginning of the podcast. It was, do we have good people that are going to be in control of this stuff or bad? And I think that's the age-old conflict that humanity is always going to have. This is where the battle comes into play. And I'm not sure how we use this technology to make sure that only the good people are putting in the programming for AI, because AI literally is everybody programming it and it's learning from everybody. So you see where I'm going? Like, what is the sampling of the world in terms of contributing?
Yeah, the ground's already been covered by Ray Kurzweil and Ted Kaczynski in the Unabomber Manifesto.
Okay.
You have an exponential or probably even a logarithmic population growth. If you look at, if you can bring up Professor Robert Fogel's technology and population chart over time. I don't know if you can bring that up on the screen.
I'll look for it.
It took about 150 million years of hominids being on the earth till they hit 1 billion people in 1804. Then from 1804 to 2000, you have almost 8 billion people. So you have a logarithmic growth of population, but a relatively linear growth of economic growth globally. So the reason why wage labor prices has been dropping over the past couple of decades, income inequality rising, is because population growth has been way outpacing economic growth. So we're experiencing a wage labor equilibrium rate right now, which means the rich get richer and the poor get poor, because the Lorenz curve drops to the it doesn't rise as gradually. It becomes steep and then straight up. So that creates the circumstances where you get into what Ted Kaczynski was talking about, when the elites have the superfluous masses. If you have completely free energy, right now the economies are based on fossil fuels. So that economic system is a way to control people. If you take away that system of control, now you have you're going to have, well, almost 90% of the people on the planet then become the superfluous masses. So then it's at that point what the elites do with the superfluous masses, and then
they've asked the question.
It comes down to, do you just genocide them? How do you genocide them? Well, you just let the economy collapse.
Fun. Can you go back to that page real quick? Fun fact, crazy fact. If you go back to that last page you were just on right there, is oh no, did we lose it? The Fogel thing. It said right there he won the Nobel Prize with a guy named Douglas C. North. That was my economics professor freshman year in college at Washington University in St. Louis.
That's
pretty
crazy.
funny. I actually joined that class. It was one of those stories where you just show up and hope to just get in the class, because it was like a Nobel Prize winning guy.
Wow.
But pretty crazy. I'm actually wondering if I have his book over there. I probably do. Is like, I don't save a lot of like books from school or whatever, but when I read his book, like that actually changed my whole viewpoint because of the way he looked at the economy. And he takes this really beautiful analogy of traffic, and he goes, would you consider traffic to be inefficient, or is it really actually a really efficient thing where you've got all these systems interacting with each other in real time? That person's slowing down, so now I've got to press my brake, and now the people behind me press their brake. And if you look at the economy like that, not as something that you are like can completely control, but something that you can just like manipulate, that you're a part of this bigger system. I've always thought that was a good way to view physics in general and kind of connect the idea of the universe to these social structures and economic structures that we live in.
Yeah. And I want to take this conversation a little bit into some more practical applications, because for people that don't understand, practically in an applicable, perspective, what zero point energy does. You talked about cell phones and powering up your cell phones with never having to ever plug it in and never charge it. It just powers on and on and on. What are some of the other areas in your household, transportation, whether it's heating, cooling, whatever, digital access? What are some of the other applications that ZPE can actually impact?
Well, everything, because at the end of the day, you're getting energy from the quantum fluctuation. So Sonny White, from that former NASA engineer, and Garrett Model with Bernard Hayes. Bernard Hayes is from Lockheed Martin. Garrett Model is
Right.
University of Colorado. They're all working on free energy microchips, and these are all just extracting very small amounts of energy from the quantum vacuum all the time. And soon we're going to have that. I'm guessing in the next 5 years. So that will be the first thing that everybody, boom, wakes up to. Then after that, I mean, application wise, we're talking about warp drives and wormholes from a propulsion standpoint. From a healing standpoint, this is where, like, when you start to manipulate space-time, you're actually creating a time travel device. But it's not really in the conventional perspective of what we see in sci-fi. It's more of like changing the dial of time, changing your rate of time, how fast or slowly you're moving relative to everything else. And what this can lead to is actually like reverse healing effects, where you would like reverse a tumor. It wouldn't send you back in time, but you could localize a region, a very small region. Like if you were able to isolate just the tumor, you might be able to cause it to like just fall apart or revert back to its pre-tumorous state, which you could imagine, like, that is just, from a healing perspective, we might be able to look at ending aging process entirely at some point within the next 100 years.
Well, that's going to be in conflict with the global demons in charge, because they don't want as many of us as we already are there.
Maybe that's
You know,
why they're doing it, right? Because they know the implications
right.
of what this will lead to. And you don't want to have, I don't know, however many billions of people they decided are the right number of people on this planet. Then we also have stuff like straight up invisibility cloaks that we could do
Yeah.
as well. And just quantum communication system. The quantum communication system will be one of the other things that they've already got, but what'll come out to the public soon, as they'll call it the quantum internet. And no one's really going to ask how, but we're just going to have an internet where your kids are playing video games against somebody in like Korea, and there's no lag, like there's no time delay. And you're going, wait, isn't it like really far away to Korea? Like, shouldn't there be like a half-second delay between the time to be like, no, it's a quantum internet. Don't think about it. At the end of the day, that means that like we figured out faster than light communication, or at least at speed of light, So the question there is, these are the technologies that are going to come out. Which ones are they? I think they're kind of leaking them out in ways where our brains can absorb them without kind of shattering and wondering.
Who's they?
And then, yeah, that's the big question as well. Is I think that actually
Who's
another
they?
shout out to Kurt Metzger. We call it the deep state. The we being the public. But who is that? It's a mix of people. It's people, politicians that are potentially in the know, that are high enough ranked, certain military members that have been in green door assignments or assignments that are like the super secret stuff. And then defense contractors, the defense contractors that help build the stuff, the engineers that actually do the design, the ones that actually George just pointed out, like, they won't talk. They don't go on Redacted. They don't go on major news shows like that. You have to get somebody like me who's just read all their works. And then for me to go explain, because they've got too many NDAs, and they're getting paid too generously, and they've got their, fellowship or whatever at their university where they don't really have to do anything. They just get paid for nothing, right? They're not going to give any of that stuff up. So it's a combination of all these things. And that's what makes it such an impossible mess to untangle. Why have we not gotten disclosure of all this? Because look at the mess I just threw on the table of who all these people who know. And we haven't even gotten to like, what have they been doing to hide this, to keep this suppressed, to keep us brainwashed in this view of the petrodollar? Like, they have done a lot, and they destroyed a lot of lives for it. And a lot of people are still alive that are responsible. Like, a lot of them, I think, are just waiting the clock out. But they're, I don't know what they're doing, but some of these people are really, really old, a lot older than life expectancy. And they're waiting to die off so they don't have to face the consequences. And I think they're hoping that, like, oh, okay, after they pass away, we'll look back at their work and we'll like forgive them for gatekeeping this and look at them in high regard. And I'm here to say, like, no amnesty for the people that are doing this. because it leads to stuff like what we have going on in Iraq or Iran right now, and stuff we've got going on in the Ukraine. We're just proxy wars everywhere. And it just feels like it's the CIA pulling the strings behind the scenes. And when we finally figure it out, when researchers, obviously great researchers like George here, is an incredible conversation, finally start to figure out, they want to go, oh, okay, we'll tell you the truth now, but you gotta give us amnesty for it now that you like are knocking on the door, like, you know, getting the truth. No way. I am using all my force, all my social media will to make sure that these people don't get amnesty.
I couldn't agree more. I want to move this a little bit to predictive programming in Hollywood, MK Ultra. You know, there's some people that think Elon Musk is MK Ultra. He's a product of MK Ultra. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. Who knows? Kathy O'Brien is an expert. I speak with her. She can speak about MK Ultra, SRA, and all of that horrible stuff. I was having a horrific conversation this morning. The work I'm doing in child trafficking vis-a-vis our own government, Child Protective Services. You know, we're finding rings that are taxpayer-funded rings, and they're targeting children of parents who are drug addicts. And we're getting these nests. We're starting to put all these players together, and we're going to come at them with everything we've got. But Hollywood has been really the harbinger, the faceplate for the CIA for decades, and they're really expert at predictive programming. Which, you know, Terminator, right? People are terrified of AI because of Terminator, Skynet. You talked about it earlier. We're talking about, you know, being able to teleport. We're talking about being able to cloak yourself, and we can go and snatch people and they'll never see us coming, kind of thing. So, George, I'm going to let you, I'm going to start this with you, and then I want Ashton to, you know, jump in. But what examples do you think support the idea that Hollywood is actually seeding future narratives in this area, but to misdirect us and not actually see the truth? Do you think they're trying to misdirect us right now, George?
Oh, you know, I did that really long article on World Geostrategic Insights, just to model the, you know, the 4 layers: grand strategic, operational, tactical, and into the, I listed nine unrestricted warfare institutional domains.
Right.
You can add 3 other domains. You have the people at the very top, you know, the Western financial elite, operating with the multinational corporations and the deep state, well, in all the different deep state areas, that meet through the secret societies, but more or less in the open societies. In, well, Soros's Open Societies Foundations, or the MacArthur Foundation, or any of these other foundations that in turn also pay the think tanks, who then supply the media with the information. But then you got BlackRock and Vanguard that own the stocks of the multinational corporations plus the media. So they control the advertising dollars that go to the media. And then they also control the stock of the media corporations, and they can hire and fire whoever they want. So when you start to look at it across the spectrum of the research fields and into the media fields and public outreach, Hollywood is just one of those fields in those dimensions.
Right.
So it's not just that they're.
I look at them as a vector of 5GW, to be honest. They're like a vector of this war.
It's all of them. And that's why I did that World Geostrategic article, because once you see how it started out with the British East India companies, and then you go into Southeast Asia, and they only had 700 or 800 kilometers of paved road. And then, once the DOD, CIA, okay, it's back then Department of War and OSS, but it became DOD, CIA.
Right.
Once the U.S. Army Corps engineer shows up there, I mean, Bangkok just gets flooded with the big oil, big tech, big construction, all the Fortune 500 companies. They start building highways to support the U.S. air bases to battle Ho Chi Minh. They start building roads and rail and airports to the Mekong River to start helping the French Indochina wars that turned into
I understand all that, George, but what I'm trying to go with is, Hollywood is seeding the future narratives right now. And you're talking about, I'm
just talking about this pattern keeps on replicating.
Right. So how do you translate that? So what are they seeding to us now? Because I want Ashton to answer this question too. What is the narrative they're seeding right now with respect to this emerging technology that may or may not be already here? I think it is, but that's just my opinion. Ashton, I think, feels the same way. What do you think they're trying to tell us right now? What are they pushing? News, Hollywood, whatever.
in the conversations I've had with some of the people this year, they're like, they don't care about conventional weapons. That's
Okay.
I can say that.
Hmm.
So
Ashton.
you have to ask yourself why they wouldn't care about conventional weapons. You covered the drone issue on Clayton Morris's show. The guy on the Sean Ryan show talked about the earthquake machine and
Yeah.
Antarctica.
okay. So just go with that.
Yeah, Eric Hecker. Yeah, I've spoken to Eric Hecker, and yeah, my view on it is it's hard to say. I think that people like myself, Eric Hecker, those are good examples. There's others as well that have been talking about like Tesla technology, science, scalar weapons, etc. We are starting now to control the conversation, which I think is really important because you have to realize from the perspective of suppressed technology, it's an information war. It's not a matter of somebody needs to go build something. They don't let somebody who's built one of these things go show up. Just the same way where it's like if you're the right, wrong kind of politician that has gotten in the oil business or whatever, you're trying to build a pipeline that they don't want. Like your life expectancy is really short. So
Right.
it's really more of a matter of getting the information out there, and which is why I think these conversations are so important. What I think they're trying to do is the whole story of the UFO phenomenon of they're trying to paint this narrative like that's not us floating around in the sky. We don't do evil stuff. We don't hide stuff. That's aliens. That just must be aliens out there. And like Spielberg, I think, is supposed to come out with a new UFO thing. I'm interested to see what narratives come out of that and if what we've been doing collectively has shaped that a little bit. Because I think you are going to see more and more people talking about like warp drives and wormholes in more realistic settings, not in like the science fiction perspective. And you're going to also hear people more and more talking about free energy and maybe even cold fusion again, whereas especially cold fusion was a super taboo thing to say after 1989. And they made it that way because they didn't want anyone looking into it. So I think you're going to see some of that coming out. But ultimately, I'm not sure. I think that our view from the truth teller standpoint needs to be the same view as the CIA's view, which is they are just doing things, right? They just see what happens and then they react accordingly. And our view should be the same. Is we should see what they do, what kind of message, what kind of narrative they put out there, and then react accordingly. What the one that I like to use for the UFO people is, oh, you think there's this UFO that's hovering around the sky and is able to just fly around like this Tic Tac or whatever. Okay, how's it doing that? Where's the energy? Like, where's the fuel tanks on this thing, right? And that's where then people go, oh, yeah, wait, that doesn't really make sense. So we must be missing something. And then my view is, because they found some exotic energy source. And then that's the secret, right?
I've seen one of those. My whole family, 6 of us in the car, we all saw the Tic Tac hovering. And then when I went to take pictures of it, my husband says, what are you doing? I said, get my camera. And we were watching it for a good minute, maybe longer. And it looked like it was skipping through the atmosphere like a white dash line, and it was gone. I mean, we were up in Hope Sound. It was in Miami in maybe a second or less. It was crazy.
And people are seeing this stuff. There's something out there and people are seeing it. And so the other last part is that we have to demystify it.
Yeah.
What I love about listening to George explain what's happening from the geopolitical standpoint in Asia and the Middle East there is that it helps demystify what's going on. Now, when these things are happening, it can help understand like why we would make a strategic strike at a certain location or why we would press Iran here or there. That's kind of the same thing we need to do for this orb technologies, plasma orb technology. You can call it whatever you want to call it. John D'Souza would call it, large super weapon drone. I would call it like hypersonic. They're really hypersonic plasma drones or something like that. But if you demystify it to a level now, when people look at it, their mind doesn't immediately go, oh, these aliens are here, like that's what they're going to psyop into us. If we can demystify to the point when people look at it, like, oh, it's Lockheed Martin messing around again with the U.S. government, then I think we'll be in a good spot.
I know somebody who's an American Airlines pilot who has seen orbs in front of their windshield as they're flying due west on a transcon flight. And for 3 hours, those 3 orbs were literally about 100 miles up over, but ahead of them and just cycling like this in front of the plane.
And the mainstream media All the mainstream media. This is not even a political thing.
I
They're
showed
doing
them your video. Sorry, I want to clarify. I showed them your video after they told me the story. They hadn't seen your video. They hadn't seen the Malaysia airline video with the orbs. And when I showed them that, he's like, Jesus, that's exactly what I saw. He was freaking out.
Yeah. 'Cause I think people are seeing these balls of light and they've been kind of wondering what they are. And it makes
Yeah.
sense for it to be plasma based. I mean, sun is plasma, gives light
Yeah.
off, right? But it didn't make sense for how they could be forming them on these smaller scales. So I think that really helps for people to understand. And then connecting it to the hypersonic designs. I haven't found the exact hypersonic project for these orbs, but I might be able to. It is most likely either Boeing or Lockheed Martin from the ones that I've looked at.
I'm
And
going to hope
there's
it's Lockheed.
but there's a reason why they hide all those designs and they don't show that. No one ever, this always just like artist rendition. There's never actually any photos of any of this stuff actually flying around out there. But what will happen if we don't demystify is that all of the mainstream medias on all sides are going to come out and go, oh, the alien invasion is here, everybody. We have to panic, right? And everybody, kind of like they did with COVID and they've done with other stuff, is that you have this mass formation psychosis that begins. Where
Right.
it happens on social media. The aliens are here. Everybody's got to go stock up on toilet paper or whatever the stupid crap is, right?
Right.
And that's what will happen. So I think we've had that narrative off. I don't think they're gonna be able to pull that off anymore, but we'll see.
Well, it's thanks to people like you and Dr. Greer who've done an incredible job, and thousands of others who are out there really just, there's people in the UFO community. Patty Greer was a UFOologist. She did a lot of movies back in the day. Nice lady. And, they tried to wreck her life, literally tried to wreck her life because she was bringing this stuff out years ago, 30, 40 years ago. So it's now the internet's forever and everybody's a podcaster. So it's kind of hard to shut us all up unless they just take the whole internet down. Gentlemen, I really appreciate your time. I want to just last question, George, start, Ashton, finish. Are we now, in your humble estimation, entering what I would call the Star Trek era?
Oh, we're at an inflection point right now with Iran. But yeah, it's going to be, I think we are, from the implications of what people have said to me. Oh, don't worry. If they beat us conventionally, we're going to go to the, to the other weapons,
Without ever telling you what the other weapons
yeah,
are.
I already know from watching him. So anyway, yeah, the speculations that they exist kind of just got confirmed.
Mm-hmm.
So, but on the other hand, I mean, if in Eurasia, are they talking about using them against Russia and China? And maybe they're speculating on whether China has some of this also.
Yep.
So I don't know. They're going to wipe out a couple 100 billion people on a first order effect that wipes out a couple 100 million, on second, third order effects. I don't know.
Yeah. That's where I guess I would jump in. I would say it's scary because, like I said at the beginning of this interview, is that what if you have this view that there's this ultimate weapon and that only one person can have it, you can justify pretty much any action. So the scary part for me isn't necessarily just us flexing on Iran and telling them, it's like, do we also have to do this to China and Russia pretty soon? Those aren't as small as Iran, and they're potentially more advanced as well.
Right.
And where is the line? Like, let's just say hypothetically, we do have teleportation technology. Is that where we say if the moment China and Russia get too close to teleportation technology, that's where we've got to jump in? I mean, I don't know the true answer, guys, but I would just say that's the lens at which I've been looking at the world. And so far, it's led me down a path where I think it's pretty accurate. I don't know.
I would agree. That's the big conversation. It comes down to, man and man's, the true nature of man. Can we live in peace amongst each other? Can we set ego aside? Can we check all of that at the door and sort of morph into where, the prime directive matters, like they say on Star Trek? You don't go and meddle in somebody else's affairs if that civilization is doing just fine as it is, and you're watching them evolve. I always used to laugh thinking about these aliens out there looking at this planet, going, "Oh my God, kick that marble to the side. These people are morons down there. Look at them, just fighting with each other constantly, and they have a massively wealthy planet. They have all this free crap, and they don't do anything with it except fight over stuff to try and control everybody. I mean, we look like idiots." Yeah. So if you look at it holistically, right? So how do we, transition the humanity into that sort of thinking? And that's where I'm coming at with this conversation. So really appreciate both of you. Ashton, how can folks follow you? Because you're just, it's really been
Yeah.
entertaining and just enlightening talking to you and your wealth
And
of
thank
knowledge.
you both, and for the platform and the amazing discussion. This has been an awesome Thursday for our Juneteenth here, and George
Oh,
for the education
Juneteenth.
on geopolitics.
What the hell is that?
And
What the hell is
we'll just
that?
take the holiday over. We'll just turn it into a time where we go and tell the truth to people. But check me out at JustXAshton on all the social media platforms, except for if you're on Rumble. I'm Just Ashton on Rumble. Thank you.
Okay. George, where can folks find you?
Oh, on X. I've been using LinkedIn, but since they, pretty much shadow ban the hell out of me, I haven't been able to use Facebook in years because they just delete all my posts. So yeah, I just started on X.
What's your X handle?
Hated that. What's that?
Your X handle. I'm going to pull it up.
Well, I don't even know what it is. I'm not really
It's
big into social
your
media.
X handle is it's a crazy no. It's George M 506 747 57. George M 506. Let me pull it up
Okay.
here.
Now I know what it is.
There it is.
Now I figured out what my Twitter handle is.
Yeah, your Twitter. Yeah, so George, I don't know why I just couldn't get like an easier one, but hey,
I have no idea. Yeah, that's what they gave me or something. I don't know.
Oh, you could actually change your @ sign. Maybe I'll do a Zoom with you and show you how you could change your @ name so it was a little bit more easy to
all right.
swallow.
Yeah, I never really pay attention to that. But yeah, also go to Energy Newsbeat.
Yeah, Energy Newsbeat.
My articles show up on there, and I got a Telegram channel, but whatever.
So
we'll get into that another day.
Ashton, a point of reference, George does publish a lot on Stu Turley's Energy Newsbeat. Stu is a wealth of information on energy, global energy, and his site, when George publishes, just gets like hammered by DDoS attacks. To 9, 10, 12,000 DDoS attacks a day. It's costing Stu, a lot of money to keep his site up because of what George publishes. So he is I guess, a global threat to the energy superpowers. They don't like him. But gentlemen, I appreciate both of you. You guys are awesome. And thanks for coming by on a Thursday on the stupid Juneteenth holiday.
Thanks, man.
All right. Take care. All right, folks, I really appreciate you guys sticking with me. And to Ashton's amazing audience, I know you guys listen to him all the time. And I think what we've uncovered in this episode just isn't about conspiracy theory or speculative science fiction. It's really a collision between two timelines, right? One where energy, innovation, and freedom have been suppressed, as always, like everything with these morons, to protect the elite control, but also one where truth, transparency, and technology can actually set humanity free. And Ashton and George, I think, do remind us of this. And I would agree, the future is already here. It's being hidden. Zero point energy, AI, the PSYOPs, artificial gravity, whether Ashton's claims withstand with empirical scrutiny, I think that the convergence on these threads with geopolitics, the hidden debt, the global AI and energy economy, all these things are suggesting we're on some sort of a cusp of a transformation. And if breakthroughs manifest, I think we're going to transition towards a post-scarcity Star Trek-like civilization. In fact, President Donald Trump said it, the best is yet to come. I hope it comes sooner than later, frankly, because I don't want to miss it. I grew up watching Star Trek, and so I want to be a part of that next generation. But I want to do it in moderation where we know that the AI isn't taking over the world and it's a benevolent, programming God behind all this, and that man can actually evolve. So the question really isn't whether we can transition to this Star Trek-like civilization. It's whether we'll be allowed to, or whether we'll even have to take it back ourselves. God help us if we have to try and take back AI from seemingly something that seems to already not be able to shut itself off. So without further ado, I appreciate everybody being here. You guys have a great Juneteenth. And I'm taking tomorrow off because I've got family coming in town. I hope you guys are doing something special for the weekend. God bless. Much love to everybody. And we'll catch you next time here on Steel News.